Welcome back to the table. Today, Emily and I are going to be taking a look at a game called Fit to Print. This one is designed by Peter McPherson, and if you're familiar with that name, it's because you've probably played Tiny Towns or more recently Wormholes, both of which we've played. But this one is from Flatout Games, and it is sort of a tense newspaper deadline-driven game.
Yes.
But light and fluffy looking, because the art's by Ian O'Toole, actually.
Yeah.
So you've got these nice little animals. They're running newspapers. We have competitive newspapers. And it's got a mix of time-based, frantic, well, it's actually all time-based.
It is time-based. It's a real-time game. We're frantically trying to put together a newspaper, but the best paper.
Yeah, the best paper.
we can.
And the best paper is going to vary from day to day because this is going to play over 3 days or 3 rounds on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the best days for newspapers.
There you go.
And what you have here on the table here is all of the components. Now, this plays far more than 2 players, but we've just got it set up for a 2-player game. You're going to have this entire mess of newspaper tiles.
Yes.
These are various shapes, various sizes, and various things. So you're going to have
articles, you've got photographs, you've got ads.
That's the 3 you have. And you see that we don't know what they are right now because they're all face down in this pile. More on that later. Over here, you've got the
Breaking news!
Breaking news. Breaking news is going to happen each day, and this is just in the advanced game because in the basic game you don't play with them, but each of these days you're going to flip one of those cards and find out what the breaking news is. For game terms, it is a rule that we all have to abide by.
Yes.
You don't want to break the breaking news rules.
Well, sometimes they can be rules that you have to follow, and sometimes they're like score extra
Scoring
points
opportunities,
if you do
yes.
different things. So they're always just changing it up a little bit.
We have these cool little 3D news desks. Those are very much related to the newspaper tiles out here. You'll see in a second. And then we have our newspaper boards or sheets, and these are folded in half just like a newspaper.
Yeah, so you have it where on your Friday and Saturday you have the smaller side, and then it gets a little bit bigger on Saturday, and then on Sunday you've got the full thing that you'll have to fill out with newspaper clippings.
Yeah, it's very cool, very thematic. And then we all have our press pass here. These are our characters. And again, in the advanced game, you can play with these character powers, which we have. And then on the back side is the player aid, which is nice. And then the last thing here, or second to last thing, are these centerpiece tiles. These are going to go on at the beginning of each day. You're going to have a centerpiece tile that has to go not quite in the center, but it has to cover this little star in some way, shape, or form before you start the round. And then each day you're going to have a different centerpiece tile.
And those centerpiece tiles are going to give you different ways to score as well.
Yeah.
That's specific to you. So like mine says 1 point for each photo above the fold. And that is a unique thing about this is you actually have a legitimate fold on the paper that makes a difference for different things. So for mine, I want to put as many photos as I can above the fold. And what was yours, David?
Yeah, mine is called Local Collector, and it says 1 point times each complete set of all 3 article types. So you're going to see some of the, even within the type of tile articles, there are different articles. There are different photographs. The photographs are going to score off of the articles. So I'm going to want to try to collect various articles and get sets of them to score a few more points. I'm going to put that right there. So once you have everything set up and ready to go, you're ready to start. Now, you've got one big decision to make. Do you want to play on normal or frantic? We played on normal.
We played on normal.
There's 3 different levels, and this really just relates to how much time you have to do a whole day or a whole round. And it's, I think, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, or 5 minutes.
Right.
We played on 4. And during those 4 minutes each day, you are going to play effectively 2 different phases of the game.
Yep.
The first one is
reporting. So we're going to take as many newspaper tiles as you want. You're going to flip over a tile, see what it is. So this is a blue article, and I say, okay, I do want this one. It's going to go land on my desk, and then I'm going to keep flipping and just keep taking things that I want. If I see anything where I don't want it, I'm going to keep it face up and put it back in the middle. So now David might see that and say like, oh, that's perfect for me. I'm going to take that one and put it on my board. Yeah,
if you've ever played Galaxy Trucker, it's a little bit like that. But to be clear, everyone is going to be doing this at
all at once.
So we're going to be doing this, taking tiles, looking at them. Okay, I'm going to put that there. Now, this seems somewhat easy, but you need to be careful because any tiles that you have left over after the next phase, which is layout, is going to be negative points. And speaking of layout, as soon as you feel you're ready, after you've collected enough tiles of all the things that you think you want on your paper, you say layout. And as soon as you say layout, everyone else at least knows, okay, one player has gone into the layout phase. But they can continue
They can keep going
the
the whole
reporting
time
phase
if they want.
want to. They just know that
There's only 4
player
minutes.
might be a little closer to going to print. More on that in a second. So during layout, you're just going to be taking the tiles off of your desk and placing them and puzzling them out on your sheet. Now, as you do this, you're allowed to sort of see if they fit, kind of move things around. You're effectively just solving this puzzle. And like Emily said earlier, in Friday, you've got a smaller area.
Yep.
On Saturday, it gets a little bit bigger, and Sunday, on the other side, bigger still. But as you do this, you're going to want to keep scoring in mind. You're going to want to put ads next to certain things. You want to put enough ads because you want ad revenue at the end of the game. You're going to want to put certain photos next to certain articles. And there are some rules also with respect to what can and can't go next to one another.
Yeah, so you have photos usually have a different thing for scoring. So like this one says it's going to give me 1 point for happiness. And each of the articles have kind of a mood indicator, right? So this has 2 happiness. I have another article that has 1 happiness. Some of them have sadness on them. At the end of the round, I'm going to want to make sure those things are as balanced as possible. So when I'm picking up these newspaper tiles and putting them on my board, I want to make sure that they're as balanced as possible, but keeping in mind things like, if I want to put these next to this photo so I can get the most points, that's still going to give me a lot of happiness now that I'm going to have to balance out somewhere otherwise.
You see things like this as you're laying out your paper and you're thinking, okay, I'll go down that road, but you just need to be careful that those goals don't conflict with the other goals because you want to kind of keep everything just so. And on top of it all, you're trying to make a good newspaper.
Yeah.
So you're trying to fill the newspaper as much as possible. You don't want any white space.
You don't want large white space. You don't want it to be like a photo here or a newspaper article here and all the rest of the middle is white space.
Now, going after that might be something that takes you too much time. So keep in mind that you will likely play this game and have some white space, but it is one of those things that get scored at the end of each round. So the whole round is going to end when everyone has said print, which is the thing you say after you're happy with what your newspaper's at, or when the timer runs out. The timer
then you
runs
are printing.
Then the editor-in-chief says print. So everyone is done, and you basically score what you have right then at the end of the round. Now, we're going to go through the scoring items because that's probably the most significant thing you need to know about the game, because as you play it, you could just do this willy-nilly.
Sure.
But you really want to keep all those scoring things in mind.
Definitely. And we've already talked about, so photos are a big part of it, right? So you got to look at each photo and what it's looking for and make sure the surrounding things are giving you points. So you do that first. Then there's also articles. So the bigger articles can give you more points, and some of the small articles just give you 1 point.
Yeah.
But you can get quite a few different points from it if you can put all the articles on your board, remembering you can't have 2 articles of the same color next to each other.
Right.
So if you have any of your things don't meet one of the rules, you're going to have to flip it over. So like if this one was touching something it shouldn't, I would flip it over to its other side, and I'm not going to get any of the points on it.
But it's not a bad thing necessarily. You could even plan to go, okay, some of it's going to flip over. It helps you fill those white spaces because you don't want to have any empty spaces.
Yes, because white space is another thing that we're going to be scoring. So for white space, we're going to look at look at your largest contiguous white space. David will look at his, and then we'll compare, right? So I had 7. David, how many do you have?
I'll say I had 8.
Okay, so then David had the largest contiguous white space, so he's going to get a penalty if he's in last, and I will get a bonus if I'm in first.
Yeah, first place gets 3 points, last place gets -1 point, and then everyone in between gets just 1 positive point as well.
So as long as you're not last, you're positive, which is great.
Exactly.
You can also score points, like we said, from our centerpieces. So if any photos I had above the fold would be giving me points in this. And then we also have mood, like we talked about earlier. So you're trying to balance that mood. So if I went heavy with those happiness, I had 3 happiness but no sadness, then that's going to be 3 negative points in the end for me. So you're trying to balance it out as much as possible. You can also get negative points for anything left over on your desk.
Yeah, don't take too much stuff. You don't want too many reporters bringing back stories that you can't use. So you do need to keep that in mind. And after you've played the game a few times, you start to get a sense for how many tiles you need. Because the first time we played, there's times where like, oh, I didn't take enough tiles, or oh, I absolutely took too many tiles, because the different sizes and shapes. There's actually, the shapes themselves are all just rectangles, but they're all, there's very skinny ones. There's different orientation. Everything has to be laid out in the correct orientation.
The way you would read it, yeah.
So you got to keep that in mind as you're taking things.
And then there's only one more thing for scoring, which is the ads, right? So you have these big ads you can put on your newspaper. So this one's giving me $3 signs. They give you 1, 2, or 3. And at the end of the round, you're just going to tally basically what is your ad revenue. And we're going to keep track of this over the whole game. At the end of the game, the person with the least ad revenue in more than 2 player is going to be just out.
Yeah,
you can't win.
They are disqualified from winning. And again, that is in more than 2 players. At 2 players, the person with the least ad revenue has negative 10 points, which is also not a great thing. But yeah, you're going to be doing that for 3 days, round after round, doing the scoring at each round, and then again, right before or after the last scoring, checking that ad revenue situation and determining who wins. This is a very fast-paced, frantic game. One thing we didn't even mention is if you do beat the clock and say print, if you're the first one to do it, you take one of these markers, the first one, in fact, 1, and then the other person, if you're playing 2 players or so on, are going to take the other markers in whatever order they finished. And then the next round, players are going to draft effectively their centerpiece tiles in that order. So if you're the first one to finish, you have that little added benefit of getting your pick of the centerpieces on display for the next round. But that is effectively all of Fit to Print from Flatout Games. This is far more tense and fast-paced than I'd expected
and there are different ways you can play it too, right? They have variants in the rulebook, so you can play it. If you're like, I don't want to do real time, you can play it turn-based.
Yep.
You can play it, they have a puzzle mode as well.
Yeah, the puzzle mode's really interesting. They have puzzles in the rulebook, and I'm sure they might have more, but everyone gets the same set of tiles, shapes, sizes, types, and everything like that. And then you have 5 minutes to build the best paper out of those tiles, which I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
That would be... it's still tense. I mean,
yeah,
it's still
I'm sure.
5 points. And I can imagine doing that and thinking, oh, okay, I did really well. Oh. And then the other player just crushed. Puzzle, and of course, they have a solo mode as well. But if you have any questions at all about the game, please make them in the comments below. We'll both get down there and try to answer what we can. But until next time, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.